Good morning. We've got a lot going on this week, so I'll probably do the blog in several instalments. This is Tuesday morning. Last night we had the news that our Prime Minister Boris Johnson has been taken into intensive care. He's not on a ventilator, but he's needing a lot of oxygen. And he's taken into intensive care to be monitored, and in case he does need to be put on to a ventilator. Obviously, as our leader through this crisis, that is quite an anxious development. It does make you wonder who is there to replace him should the worst happen, and it does really make you think about your own mortality. If we can't keep the Prime Minister alive, then who is safe? That's quite a sobering thought. And anxiety is a word you hear a lot, and I've used it myself. I'm reminded of listening to those reports on a evening during the Falklands crisis, and those gut-wrenching moments when you heard that one of our battleships had been sunk with the inevitable loss of life. I'm reminded of foot and mouth and trying to upload that map that showed you how the disease was spreading, and trying to upload it over a dial-up connection, and that was so slow, and you just wonder if the disease was creeping towards you, and therefore your stock would be the next contributing to one of the funeral pyres that you could always see burning in the distance. So, a pretty sombre Tuesday morning. We'll see how the week develops. Welcome to our coronavirus weekly podcast. I recorded the previous segment on Tuesday this week, when I was quite concerned about the state of the nation once it was reported that our Prime Minister had gone into intensive care. I'm pleased to say that since then, we're now on Saturday morning, he's out of intensive care. Last I heard he was still in hospital but walking around, so that's good, and I think he's a little bit of a talisman for us. As I said previously, loathe him or love him. If you can't keep your Prime Minister alive, then what chances are for the rest of us? Okay, but it's Saturday morning, it's Easter Saturday. We're still in the soft lockdown that the government have declared. People can still go out for exercise. Obviously, social media is awash with people who are taking that to an extreme. Reports of groups of cyclists out going across Westminster Bridge, which sounded quite brave. A few people in their mobile homes being stopped on the way to the Lake District, but overall it seems quite quiet. We've had one walker through here who was probably lost more than anything, but we were able to direct him back to the road. So, are we getting any more optimistic? Listening to the daily press briefings, it feels a little bit more optimistic, although people are still dying in ever increasing numbers, and obviously it's difficult to feel optimistic while that's happening, and they're using a lot of that as propaganda. There's no other word for it, to keep us in, to keep people tied to their homes and not going out this weekend. And this weekend is obviously going to be a big test. Lots of talk about PPE in the hospitals and a lack of availability. It's a little bit difficult to know where that comes from. Obviously you can have one or two troublemakers who pass the story on to their union or their association. The press get hold of that and blow it up. I'm sure in some areas there are shortages. Whether that's in the critical care areas, I can't tell. What we've got to bear in mind is, though, we've prided ourselves on just-in-time supply chain, a supply chain that's heavily reliant on overseas. And when you get in an emergency and you suddenly want to ramp up production at home, well, you just haven't got the stocks. So where they're getting the basic material from, I don't know. I know there's a call out yesterday for people to supply the raw materials for where they were 3D printing masks, and I'm sure that's across the board. You know, the basic material to make the scrubs from. Just don't know where they're getting that from. I'm sure they're not manufacturing it in the UK. So again, I thought a strong performance from Matt Hancock, explaining what he wants done, whether they're able to deliver that through all the lines of management that no doubt exist in the health service. We'll wait and see. You've got to give a lot of support for the NHS. They are putting their lives on the line, there's no doubt about that. But after all, that is their job. We've just got to make sure that they've got the equipment to do their job. I have a probably slightly jaundiced view of the health service, having always used it as an adult with probably not life-threatening injuries, but my experience is always an organisation that's over-bureaucratic, always seems to be full of administrators hanging around who don't seem to be doing an awful lot, and care assistants who are generally pretty surly, and I wouldn't always want to think I was putting my life in their hands. But clearly there are some excellent doctors, some excellent nurses, and we've just got to hope that those are the ones that are now shining through, and that if you do end up there, those are the ones who are going to be looking after you. So what else is happening? Grace and I are just starting our final circuit of the field. The weather is so taking the piss. It's a beautiful day again, a beautiful morning. I think it will tail off a little bit by Easter Monday. But at the moment it's super. Really is the sort of weather where you want to be stuck inside or stuck at home, but needs must. Officially I should have been at the dressage championships this weekend, so we're missing out on that. I would have been through one gala evening. I'd have just have been getting ready to turn up back up at Hartbury for a lovely cup of cappuccino before I did a bit of editing and started the day. And tomorrow we would have been taking Vincent for his pet plan class. So that's all off. So I've taken the chance to go back over some of my old video, going right back to 2013, and re-edit that in my modern style. That's been quite an interesting exercise. We'll see how we get on with that. It was quite useful because I found that in my archive banks I hadn't actually archived Blenheim 2013 away, so I had to power up the old computer, which is always interesting, going back into Windows 7 and it whirs and burrs away. But luckily Blenheim 2013 and Broadway 2013 were sitting there, and so I've transferred them across into one of my modern archives. Okay, so we are promised a review of the lockdown arrangements next week. I think that might not be anything more than, we'll review it again in another couple of weeks. But hopefully things continue to move in a positive direction. That death rate now starts to fall. We find out what's happening in Germany and how they're managing to get such good figures. We get some PPE through to the front line. We get this testing going, and more importantly, we work out what to do with the results of the testing. I don't think we're ever going to be out of this until we've got a vaccine, and looking at the press today, that seems to be the ultimate goal. And some people talk about a vaccine by September. Other people are saying 12 months, and I guess you pay your money, you take your pick. I do think that if we come out of the lockdown too quickly, we'll get another surge in cases, and we'll just have to go back in and manage our way through that. Okay, so as you can hear, Grace is ready to go in, so we'll say thank you very much. Have a safe weekend, and I'll tell you where we are next weekend. The sun is just coming out beautifully. What a great day for being stuck inside. Bye.